Everybody in your crew identifies as either Big Mac Burger, McNuggets, or McCrispy Sandwich. But you're the Filet-O-Fish Sandwich all day. That crispy fish, that savory tartar sauce, that melty cheese, that pillowy bun. Yeah, you get it. Every time.
And if you love the Filet-O-Fish, right now you can catch two of the classics you love for just $6. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipschutz, managing editor of the National Newsroom at Lee and co-host of the program of Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. We're back. We took a little break, but we're back. Award season is done. I don't even remember who won. Barbie was Best Picture. Was that it? I can't remember.
I told you you don't remember after this. But you know what? The strange thing is that during this kind of break, I talked to the producer of Cabrini, which has been out in theaters. And, you know, people go, oh, is that a religious film? I'm not going to go. No, thanks. I don't care. And he won an Oscar for a short subject he had done. And I said, does it change things for you? Is it really different? He says, we start back at the beginning every single time. And you have to try and get people to finance whatever you want to produce. It gives you confidence, but it doesn't necessarily assure you that you're going to have the money you need to make the next film. Well, this Cabrini, which is about the first American saint, Mother Cabrini, was something he wasn't planning on doing. In fact, it was a billionaire who made his money through leasing cars, who came to him and said, let's make this a movie. And he didn't know much about it at all. And he said, well, we first have to have some kind of a script. We've got to have something that will bring people in. When he looked at it, he thought it was going to be too big. It was just going to be too much to put in one movie. And so what do? For him, the biggest kind of bonus was that he was able to find a place in Buffalo, New York, where he could film this. And he said it had all the buildings that he was looking for, all the things he needed. And I think he will be a big advocate for filming in regional areas. I think, you know, so often you have like a state film office or board or whatever that try and get people to come to your state, but they don't really have the infrastructure, or they don't have the background to promote more films. And he is so smitten on Buffalo that it's like he'll go back. And so then I asked him, what's the next thing you're going to be doing? And he said he traffics in origin stories. He did Marshall, if you remember that one, about Thurgood Marshall, the Supreme Court judge.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he's had a number of ones like that. He worked with Mel Brooks for a long time, and they made a lot of films together. But he has this very eclectic career, and he's interested now in doing the origin story of the Wright brothers. So who knows where that'll go? But we do have a segment with him if you'd like to run that. And
Sure.
You can hear what he has to say about he talks a mile a minute. So if you don't hear me in there, it's because he's doing all the talking.
Okay. So I don't think you mentioned his name. His name again is?
Sure. It's Jonathan Sanger.
Okay.
And Jonathan Sanger has been around for many, many years.
Oh, yeah. I know the name. Yep.
Yeah. And you can look at the list of things. He produced The Elephant Man, the version that Mel Brooks also produced. And it was like one of those first things you go, why is Mel Brooks doing this very serious story? Well, he likes to do people stories. He thinks that people stories really resonate with an audience. And, you know, he's still at it. He's still making films and looking for new properties that he can adapt.
All right. Well, let's go ahead then and listen to that interview.
My first response was, you know what? I think it's a great idea if this is what you want to do, but I don't think I'm the right guy to produce it. He says, why? I says, well, I like making movies about real people, which I've done my whole career. I mean, I haven't intended to do that, but it just seems to have worked out that way. And I really like that because I like making movies about people that other people can relate to. And I don't know how to relate to a saint. So I said, I really don't know that I'm the right guy to do this. He says, no, you're missing the point. This is not about her being a saint. This is an origin. You know, he didn't say this, but he said it's about a woman who, it's a woman empowerment story. He says it's not a religious story. It's not a story particularly about faith in terms in the capital F faith.
Sure.
It's much more about a woman who believed in herself, and as a result of her own gumption and ability to stay with things, was able to make amazing things happen. I said, "Oh, I like that. That's a very that I can understand. I get that." And so from that point on, initially he didn't have a movie, he didn't have a script, he didn't have anything. He said, "Look, I'll if you want to do this with me, you can be an advisor." And that's really what I became. Initially an advisor, and I gave him ideas, and we talked about writers, and I ultimately met with Rod Barr, who Eustace actually had met, and he suggested I meet him in LA. And he said, "But if you don't want to use him, you don't have to. I just think he's a really good guy." So I met with Rod. I read some of Rod's scripts, and I thought, "Oh, wait a minute, this guy is very good. He's really good." And I liked the way he thought about things, and I liked his passion for the project. So I told Eustace, I said, "I think he is the right guy." I said, "But I don't know if he'll get us all the way there, but I think he will, he can definitely crack the story. He's the guy to do it." And I said, "But in order for him to do it, I think you should make sure he goes to Italy and he really does the research." And Eustace immediately agreed with that, took him to Europe, took him to Italy. They spent several weeks there doing research, and that was the beginning. And then when he came back, we started discussing what the movie could be. And I had read by that time a number of books about Cabrini, but and I realized that she had such an extraordinary life that you couldn't tell her story in one movie. I mean, it was just not possible that if we were going to do her longitudinal life story, this would be at least a 10-part miniseries. So, and Rod was starting to write, but it was very episodic initially because he was doing it. She was in New York, then she was in New Orleans, then she was in Nicaragua. She ultimately went to Buenos Aires, and pretty early we realized that it was getting very sketchy and episodic, and that what we really needed to do was an origin story, which I was familiar with, even with Marshall, which was the previous movie I had done about Thurgood Marshall. That was an origin story too. It wasn't about him being the justice of the Supreme Court. It was about him as a young lawyer. So we figured, okay, if we tell the story of her from her beginnings somewhat and bring her through New York, which was the first place she came to, that would be enough. That would be the canvas on which we would tell the story. And that became the process because it made sense that everything that she did in New York was the model for what she did after she left New York. She went from New York to Buffalo. She was in Chicago major time. She was in New Orleans. She was in Los Angeles. She did go to South America. She went to all these other places. But she was creating the model in New York and then defining the model afterwards. So
you have people, though, who said to you, "Oh, yeah, that it's not going to work." Because you'd have people in your business where they go, "Yeah, no, they're not going to be watching a religious person."
Well, of course, everybody did. And one of the big things we were concerned about was, is this just going to be perceived as a religious movie about a nun? Who wants to go see a movie about a nun anyway? So, I mean, that was our and we said, well, we have to find a way to separate ourselves from that in some way. We have to find a way to define her as she's a woman first. She happened to be a nun, but it wasn't the driving. I mean, what made her interesting was what she was made of, not what she became, in terms of religious order. So we didn't really want to go into that in the story. Now, it's still an issue in terms of marketing because it's very hard to separate yourself from when you have someone who's in a habit and she's always dressed that way, you're going to think that way. And it's still a challenge in the marketing to figure out quite how to do that. But that's the challenge we're facing. But we're doing fairly well. I mean, I'm pretty happy about the way we're doing. And I certainly was never interested in doing a kind of a typical faith-based story. That was not what this is. And it isn't, I mean, anyone who sees the movie, and this is really where I think movies survive is the word of mouth. And the word of mouth is not going to be about a woman who prays for things to happen and that's the way it happened. No, she's a woman who actually goes out and finds a way to make things happen herself. And that's what makes her interesting and unusual.
Thanks, Bruce, for that interview. You mentioned at the top, sometimes these biographies, it's a religious thing. Are you going to go want to see it? I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes, and Rotten Tomatoes, it is what it is, but it is an interesting website because it gives you some aggregate scores and at least gives you a sense of what people are thinking. So 72 film critics have reviewed it, 90% on the tomato meter, and the audience scored 98%. 98%. People love it.
He is not one of those ones that, remember when they used to have Billy Graham movies all the time? We would talk about the Billy Graham movies. And he thinks that they get a bad rap because they do have a good story to tell if it's based in truth, and this one is. And how do you tell a story about a woman who wears a habit most of the time? You're going to go, oh, it's got to be a religious film. But it's a story of determination. And I am on Rotten Tomatoes, in case you're wondering. And I don't know that I've already put my review in, but I did review it, and I gave it 3 stars.
3 stars?
4.
Okay.
3 out of 4.
Well, there you go. So either you've contributed to that 90%, or it's about to go up or down based on...
We'll have to watch, right?
Depending on how your 3 stars works into the aggregate of the 90% tomato. But yeah, it sounds like a good one. Now, we've got this episode that we're working on right now. We don't have like one big smash thing we're talking about, but we have several things that are just kind of in the pipeline. So what else do you have for us? Okay,
so this week coming up on PBS, Nova. Are you a fan of Nova?
I am, yes.
They're going to look at the AI revolution. Now, in our business, we always wonder, how is this going to factor in? Where we've seen where they try to write stories and you go, that's not really that good. I don't know that we're going to get rid of humans just yet. But in other areas, it has advanced. And one of the things that they look at in this AI Revolution episode, which airs next week on PBS, is how medically it has changed things. And I got a chance to talk with Miles O'Brien, a correspondent for PBS, and he lost his arm 10 years ago. And he has had a variety of different kinds of prostheses that he's used, but they made him a kind of a RoboCop kind of Terminator arm, and it's expensive, extremely expensive, and it does a lot of things, but it's a different way that it's controlled. And so we talked about the arm because I thought, is this, if I lost an arm, how would I be? And he talks about what this is all leading to. And it's one of those things where it makes you feel good about AI because you know that it isn't all just kind of something that we saw in a sci-fi movie and we thought, oh, God, that's what our future is. And they're going to be RoboCops that are going to be out there grabbing us every minute. But this is where it works and where they found that it's a great way to share medical information, particularly when it's all around the world, advances are happening, and that they could, possibly in things like cancer, get a solution faster than what they might in other ways. So here's Miles O'Brien talking about his new arm. Okay, let's ask about this hand.
Yeah.
First of all, is it like so expensive that nobody can afford it?
Probably, yeah. I got workers' comp, so yeah. I think this whole thing is it's a 6-figure operation.
And do you prefer it?
I can't honestly say I do for all things. What you have to understand is this is an amazing thing. Very difficult to replace it. So while this looks more like a hand, it's useful. Like it's really good for holding a drink, I discovered, and that's very useful for me. So, but it's not like I can do a QWERTY keyboard or the piano with this thing. So I have other gadgets like one that I use for bike riding or
several?
Yeah. You have to think about it as like tools in the toolbox as opposed to one thing that's going to replace. But this thing has some great utility. It's badass looking, which counts, right?
Right.
So
it needs tattoos, though.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice if if you could control the fingers and all that. I'm still.
So you can't write with it.
It doesn't matter so much because it's not my dominant. But without an elbow now, so there are people who are below elbow amputees who get a lot more utility out of these things because, for one thing, they have many more nerves, much more fidelity on controlling And it's kind of, as you go up, it becomes orders of magnitude difficult because you have more to control and less surface area to control it from. So as you go up the chain, it gets harder and harder. So the state of the art is to put a titanium rod in your bone, have it stick out, attach the prosthetic to it, and wires go up inside the pipe and attach directly to nerves. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
No.
Yeah, because then you got this pipe sticking out wherever you go, and that could be dangerous.
You would never get through the airport. I have friends, though, who had the old school.
Yeah, I still wear the old body power thing. And it's very useful.
They find that sometimes they don't even want to wear it.
Yeah.
Is that you too?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I, like this past week, I was clearing out a storage facility down in Florida. So I use this thing would be too quirky and heavy and difficult. So I use the body powered thing and can pick boxes up and so forth. But if I'm sitting down and writing a script at home, most days I don't wear it. I don't bother with it. So it just depends on, again, it goes back to the tools and the toolbox notion, right? Do I need the tool today or not? And you go from there.
It's nice to have the option.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bruce, for that interview. An interesting thing you bring out with AI and technology, the audience might be interested to know, and maybe you would be interested. I don't know if you know this or not, but we actually use AI to produce this program. Did you know that?
What?
Yes.
You mean it's not real?
See, this is kind of the misinformation that comes with AI. There's a lot of like fun little tools out there that we can use to help with the program. So, for instance, if you think back to a couple years ago when Peter Jackson did that big documentary on the Beatles and the Get Back sessions and all that, he kind of invented, I don't know if him personally, but his team worked on this method of separating the audio, like the spoken word audio, from other tracks. So you could take a single track and then multi-track it by pulling out the layers. So it could pull out, this is George's voice, this is George's guitar, this is Ringo's voice, this is Ringo's drums.
Wow.
So we actually use something somewhat similar. It's not quite as powerful as that one, but the program that we use to edit the podcast has a tool called Enhance. And what we can do is we can take audio clips. So that audio clip you just heard of your interview, when you sent it to me, there was a little bit of echo in it. There's a little bit of background noise, and we're able to filter out that echo and background noise. So it sounds more like we're recording in the studio. So that's how we can use it to help improve our program.
So it's not like changing the content.
Right.
It's making the content better.
Exactly. So there's so many different applications for AI now. Everybody talks about, of course, the negative, the stuff that, is it going to lead to Terminator and
2001.
Right, exactly. All this craziness going on. But the reality is there's a lot of really good applications for it. And the tools, like, for editing an audio program, nobody wants to hear echo or background noise or things like this. This is filtering out the junk that we don't want, and giving you a clean recording. So that's your little podcasting lesson of the day.
But can you make me sound better? Because I have the worst voice in the world.
Sure. You sound so much better.
Make me sound like Sam Elliott. Hello.
Oh, not quite. We're not quite there. Well, actually, I think we are there. I think we there is a program that can do that, but it's
come on, they do it for singers. They can do
on
it
TikTok,
for us, right?
Yeah, I know that's.
Oh, we can't do TikTok. We're not allowed, right?
No, that's nope. That's the bad stuff. Bad. So, what else we have? We have a couple more programs you want to bring up, right?
Pulling up to Mickey D's just for drinks? Oh yeah, that's me. Nothing extra, just perfection and a straw. Coming in hot for the coldest cups on the block. Because there are drinks. Then there are drinks from McDonald's.
Mix things up with any size lemonade or sweet tea for $1.49. Perfect with our classic fries. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
It's a hodgepodge. I told you this is going to be kind of a wild week. Also coming up on Apple TV Plus is a limited series, but it could go, to another season like White Lotus did, called Palm Royale, which is set in the 60s in, Palm Beach. And there they are kind of enjoying the life of the haves, and you see a have-not try and kind of worm her way into it, and what this is all about. Now, it's funny, but it's also very serious in parts. It stars Kristen Wiig as this woman who wants to get involved in society. And it's kind of the matriarch of the whole thing is Carol Burnett. But Carol Burnett is in a coma, and she says it's the best job ever. She does scenes with Ricky Martin, but she doesn't have to talk. So she said, come on, how do you say no to this? And Allison Janney is one of the other kind of doyens in the community. But it's very fun to see how it plays out. And if you remember that period, probably don't because you're too young, but you would see some of the things that were very kind of Mad Men-ish about the world. And that's coming up beginning this next week. You have a series that's coming up, right?
I do. Sure, I do.
Do you want to talk about that? And then I'll go to a movie.
Yep, we'll do that. And then we'll set you up for the big finish then.
Okay.
So we, of course, naturally, if you've been listening to this program long enough, you know that I am a very big Star Wars fan. The next program, and I just told you about this. So just hours before we are recording this episode, Star Wars The Acolyte trailer dropped worldwide, and it looks good. Now, this is an interesting one because Star Wars has become a little bit, it's a little bit under fire with fans right now because, we haven't had a movie in quite a few. The last movie that came out was the end of that previous trilogy right before COVID. So we're going on 4 years without a movie. And it looks like at least another couple years before another theatrical release is going to come out. And the various TV programs it's been an ebb and flow. So, we've had some good seasons of The Mandalorian. We've had some not so good. A lot of complaints have kind of come up that, you're sort of stretching a storyline that would fit nicely in 2.5 hours into kind of like 8 episodes that have a lot of filler in them just to stretch them to 8 episodes. So that's been the complaint. But The Acolyte, it looks pretty good. Carrie-Anne Moss, who we all know from The Matrix. Yep.
Yeah.
She is kind of this Jedi person. The storyline is a little uncertain. It's kind of like, I think the tagline is, in the age of light, a darkness rises. And it takes place about 100 years before The Phantom Menace. So we're not likely going to see very many familiar characters. I suspect we will see Yoda because Yoda's like 900 years old, so he'll presumably show up. Maybe we'll get a young Chewbacca. I don't know. It's possible. I did see, I think, a Wookiee in the trailer, so maybe that's Chewie. Who knows? But it looks good. There's a lot of lightsabers. I think the thing that we've seen a lot with some of the recent programs is we've kind of moved away from the Jedi storyline. The Mandalorian has some of that, but it's also we've with like Andor and things like that, it's kind of the everyday people of the universe. So we're gonna get back into a Jedi storyline. Don't know all the details. Trailer looks pretty good. I'll try and remember to drop a link in the show notes to that trailer so you can go check that out. But yeah, we're wrapping up right now the final season of The Bad Batch, that cartoon series. So that's going on right now. So once that series wraps, that'll get us pretty close, more or less, to the start of this new series, which 2-episode premiere June 4th on Disney Plus. So there you have it.
So shouldn't that be one that I wouldn't need to have any background knowledge to be able to understand, right? It's new enough that, oh yeah, in the 3rd episode of the 4th season of whatever, this happened.
Yeah, I think with this, if you have at least a working knowledge of the Star Wars universe, that's all you really need. I don't think you're going to need to know characters or anything like that. In reality, this might be actually the type of program where if you've never watched any Star Wars in your life, you could, in theory, start with this. And then once the series ends or wraps or whatever, then you start picking up the newer stuff. You watched it in order. I mean, how crazy is that?
Oh yeah. Have you done that with the Marvel ones where you should put them, this one goes here and this one goes there and it all amounts to something?
I've not with Marvel, but I mean, like with Star Wars, I've kind of, there is, you can layer in all the things within the timeline. And
does it look okay? Or do you go, oh, this is really stupid?
It mostly makes sense. Some of the stories have changed a little bit where you'll question things from time to time, but I think they've done generally a good idea, linking up the pieces.
Why did they have such bad lasers back in the day and the bridge looked so awful, right?
Right, exactly. I know. So, yep. So Star Wars, I'm excited. I know my daughter, when she gets home from school later, I'll show her the trailer and she'll probably freak out. That's how good this thing looks.
Did you guys ever buy a lightsaber or not?
No.
You haven't? Have you been to Disney World to that?
No, that's kind of on the spring break plans for 2025. So I think that's in the future. Yep.
Can we go? I'd like to go.
That would be good. Yep. I want to build my
Going
own
alone
droid.
is not a good thing, but will you give me the invitation and I'll come?
I will. Yep. How about we do
and
that?
The kids will go, oh God, do we have to carry this guy again? No, we're not going with you.
All right. So what do we have? You got one more thing you want to talk about?
And that one more movie I want to mention because I think that you might just ignore it.
Okay.
You'll go, yeah, I don't care. And it really deserves to be seen. It's called Snack Shack. And it was done by a director who lived in Nebraska. And he did it about his days, 1991, in Nebraska City, Nebraska. Now, all that kind of smacks of, oh, this is just kind of a vanity piece for his friends and all that. But it is very, very, very funny. If you remember Gabriel LaBelle, who was in The Fabelmans,
okay,
who played the kind of the younger version of Steven Spielberg.
Oh, sure, right, yep.
He's in this as one of the friends. Two friends decide that they're going to get the contract for the snack shack at the swimming pool. And so they get the contract and all of the things that go on at the swimming pool during the summer and their own lives and how that spills out. I laughed so hard and I wasn't expecting to. I thought it was one of those ones that you go, oh, I got to see it. Okay, I'll watch and then maybe make a grocery list while I'm at it. It was very funny. And if you have any knowledge of Nebraska at all, you will laugh even twice as hard because it mentions things like Mannheim Steamroller. Mom and Dad want to go see a Mannheim Steamroller concert.
Sure.
That's based out of Nebraska.
Okay.
And then they mention an old governor of Nebraska, and they say, your hair looks just like Kay Orr's. So there are little things like that that would pass by most people. But I'll tell you, if you know anything about it, you will laugh twice as hard, and you'll still enjoy the plot that it has. So it's one of those summer kind of teen movies that I think you'll enjoy, even if you know nothing about the area. And it was the people in the town, I must say, first of all, the first words that you hear are the ultimate four-letter word about more times than you would hear in a Martin Scorsese film.
That's a lot of times.
So it's not a kid film at all, but if you're of that age range, and you're probably in that age range, aren't you, Ter?
Yeah.
How old were you?
In what year?
1991.
1991, I would have been 16.
Perfect. This is
Perfect
for you. It'll have all those things that you remember about that time. It's one not to ignore because I think that if you see it, you'll go, you know what? Let's watch that thing. I think it might be fun. So there's my recommendation for the week.
Okay, I'm looking at the what they're wearing in one of the pictures, and I think I might have had something similar to it. So yeah,
See?
Bringing me back to high school.
Rotten Tomatoes yet either, but it'll be at least a 3-star.
Okay, so yeah, just I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes also. Only 22 reviews so far from critics, 73%, so respectable. But the audience score, again, not a lot of audience yet, but 92% from the limited numbers. So
yeah, and it's an indie film. It's from an arm of Paramount, and it's in select areas. To be honest, because I'm near Nebraska, we are a select area, but very fun, very fun.
Well, there you go. So we've got a lot of stuff. Nothing too big, but a lot of nuggets here. So a lot to get you either into the theater, onto streaming, stuff to look forward to. A lot's out there.
Yeah, it's a lot. So we're back. Are you tired from all that time? I'm just exhausted.
I'm just happy we're not talking about Barbie or yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, but I've got all that crap at home somewhere. I even wore my I'm Ken Enough shirt on Oscar night because it was warm.
Nice,
so it's good.
Nice.
But yes, we're past that now. We're moving on to the next phase of competition, and there we are.
There we are. All right. Well, on that note, we will wrap for the week and be sure to return next week for another episode of Streamed and Screened.
Swimsuit? Check. Sunscreen? Check. Phone charger? Check. Don't forget to pack the 5-Hour Energy. It fits great in a pocket or carry-on, and the alert feeling will help you arrive ready for anything. Now get 20% off when you use code 5HETRAVEL at 5hourenergy.com. Expires April 30th. One-time use only. Not valid with other discounts. Remember, visit 5hourenergy.com and use code 5HETRAVEL to save 20%.
Join us today during the Jeep Celebration event. Right now, get 20% below MSRP for an average of $15,178 under MSRP on the purchase of a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland 4xE or Summit 4xE. Not compatible with lease offers or with any other consumer incentive offers. $15,178 average based on 20% below average MSRP from all 2023 Grand Cherokee Overland 4xE and Summit 4xE models in dealer stock. Residency restrictions apply. Take retail delivery from dealer stock by 4/1. Jeep is a registered trademark.